Now I'm not going to do this too much. So here's the key to rhino vipers. Absolutely stunning. Like, look at those colors. How's it going, lads? Welcome to Reptile Talk, the channel where we talk about reptiles. Today, I've got my little double hook stick out, meaning we're going to be handling some very interesting snakes. Today, I want to teach you how to set up and keep rhino vipers. Now, disclaimer, rhino vipers are highly venomous snakes. They should only be kept by professionals, and they're very beautiful snakes, so we should give them the best care that we can. So when I'm talking about rhino vipers, I'm more specifically referring to Bitis nasicornis, not Bitis rhinoceros. So Bitis nasicornis is found all over the central part of Africa, if I can say so, not all the way up north, not all the way in the south. And they usually inhabit rainforests. So they like it humid. They're not out in the savannah, they're really rainforest animals. Now, this can be a bit counterintuitive when we're talking about a captive setting. As you're going to see, especially for younger ones, you want to keep them a bit drier in the beginning. Now, I just talked about warmth. Let's jump into temperatures immediately because I'll talk about humidity a bit later as well. But basically, you want to keep them at around 65% humidity. And temperature-wise, the hot spot can go up to 30 degrees Celsius. And I mean, this room doesn't really drop below 19, 18 degrees Celsius. Let's say around the year it's about 20 degrees Celsius, and they're doing just fine. I have no nighttime heating, I don't require it. And in their natural habitats, that's about what it's going to be. It might get a bit colder, but in captivity, we want to keep them a bit more comfortable. They're going to be happier if we keep them a bit more comfortable. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these animals are extremely beautiful. I don't think there are many animals that rival this animal's beauty. However, they don't move much. So having these animals in an enclosure, you're not going to have them to look at them move around. They kind of sit pretty in a spot. At night they might move around, but at night you're going to have your lights off, so you're not going to see much unless you're walking through with a flashlight, which can be very interesting. Since they are so lazy, quote unquote, you can get away with feeding them a little less. So especially for fully grown animals, I like to feed once every 2 weeks, and even that's a bit much. Sometimes, especially when it's in breeding season, males especially will just skip food. Females will skip food if they're gravid, so if they have little baby snakes in their stomach. And that can go for months. I've had it and I didn't really notice much of a condition change in the animals. So it does happen that they'll go off feed. When they're young, I try to feed them weekly with smaller prey items. Now, there is an issue with captive animals, and I want to say that's more the keeper's issue, is we tend to overfeed. I have made that mistake. I've lost a boa constrictor because of that mistake. Overfeeding is definitely a thing. So when they're fully grown, about once every 2 weeks, if I feed them weekly, it's going to be smaller prey items. And again, the smaller ones, categorically once a week. I might skip a week here and there. You're going to see my animals are quite chunky. So when I see that it's a bit excessive, I'll skip a week. They don't move around much, so they don't burn many calories. So the way I'm going to be setting these guys up is going to be a semi-planted tank. I'm going to have a couple of plants in pots, and then the rest is just going to be wood chips. That's so the enclosure is not too humid. Again, in captivity, you want to keep these guys a bit drier. My room is already at like 60% humidity. So everything I would be adding on, I would be adding on. So yeah, everything else is gonna be wood chips, just some hardscape, a couple of plants in a pot, and then the animals. And later on, when they grow, when they're a bit tougher, I'm gonna do a full-on bioactive setup with plants inside the substrate. Here, the plants are outside the substrate, quote unquote. They're in pots. So without further ado, let's show you guys how I do things. This is the enclosure. I've already started setting it up. It's a wooden enclosure with a front glass and a back opening door. I've already put in 2 potted plants, and these are just wood chips. And we're gonna move from here. So a bit more details about the enclosure. It's, I think, 80 or 85 long. It might be 60 high or something. Yeah, probably 60 high and 60 deep as well. This is more than enough for them to grow out in, and then once they're bigger, they're gonna get probably a 1.5 meter enclosure. Okay, I'm done with my hardscaping now. I put a bunch of driftwood inside, and you can see I've tried to keep it bunched up on the sides, coming from the back to the front, which is gonna give you a bit more sense of depth. If we go to the back here, it looks horrendous, but you're only supposed to service from the back, so that's fine. I've also tried to hide the pots with the branches a little bit from the front. Now, these pots are not brightly colored, so it's fine. They're just clay pots. So I'm gonna put my water bowl here, and I think we can move our animals in. So one more thing I did is I sprayed down the wood chips a little bit. They are quite dry, and I'm also filling up the water bowl now. So they are quite dry, and there's a bit of dust that can come up as as the snakes move around in it. Now I'm not gonna do this too much. So here's the key to rhino vipers. Yes, they're rainforest animals, but they need to be kept relatively dry. Like 70% humidity is really the high end. I would really rather like 60, 65-ish. Yeah, 65 really sounds good for these guys, especially when they're younger. And as they grow, they can be more tolerant. And so that's why this is not a fully bioactive setup, because that would require a lot of misting, a lot of humidity. And these snakes, still being young, they're not even sub-adults yet. They're quite fragile to respiratory infection. We keep this too humid and they will. So, especially when they're younger, keep them drier than you would intuitively think. That's why most of them, when the first exports from Africa went to Europe, is because people just kept them way too humid. So the key is really keep them a little drier than you think. But also don't keep them like desert levels dry, 30% or something. Really, 65%, 70% really sounds good. The moment we've all been waiting for. So, these are the special little guys. So this is their grow out box. As hatchlings, or, I mean, they don't hatch out of an egg. They're actually ovoviviparous, which you can look that up. But yeah, it's kind of between an egg and between live birth. Yeah, well, anyways, the size they came out in was really tiny. They've grown quite a bit. It's actually amazing how fast they grow. So we're gonna get our fancy little double hook. If you want to learn all about hook sticks, watch my last video on my top 5 essentials in the snake room. Wouldn't be able to live without a hook stick. No, I made a mistake there. I went too far back. I'm gonna try a bit further up front. Lift her up. Slow and steady. See, is she gonna drink a bit of water? This is actually the male. I'm gonna put a pair in here. You can see longer tail. Actually, I might be mistaken. Let me get the other one out so we can be sure. Absolutely stunning. Like, look at those colors. Look at those colors. And you can see they're really young because their horns haven't started developing yet. And what makes these guys really special is they're actually het leucistic. Their dad is the only leucistic rhino viper I know of. And these are his little ones. Putting the second one in. Let's put her up on this side, on this branch. Now, they haven't been together ever since they came out of mom. And so, yes, this is the female. And that is the male. And I can see that because the tail is longer on this dude than it is on her. Look at these guys. Absolutely stunning. These are my favorite snakes. 100% in the world. Like, look at those colors. It really doesn't come across on camera. The yellows, the blues, the reds, the greens, the blacks, all coming together. So as I said previously, they each carry 50% leucistic genes. So what does that mean? If these two were to mate, 25% of the offspring would be leucistic, theoretically. I think they're going to be much happier with all the space here anyhow, even though they're going to be sharing the space. They have much more space to move in, and when they get bigger, which I think within a year I'll already have to upgrade these dudes. Or dudettes. Dudes and dudettes. That's going to be it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Also, leave any thoughts you might have in the comments down below. Anything you want to see, any feedback. I'm always open to learning, just as I'm always open to teaching. And on that note, I'll see you guys next time.